The lid doesn't quite click. You press it down with your thumb, hear the soft give of plastic that's been opened and closed too many times, and set the container back in the fridge at an angle. Because if you push it all the way to the back, you'll have to move the other things, and you're not doing that right now. There are 4 other containers in there already. Different sizes, different ages. One of them has rice in it that you can't quite remember cooking. You bought the containers in March, a whole set, the kind that stack, the kind that promise a particular kind of person is about to exist in your kitchen, someone who portions things out on Sunday and eats with intention all week. You remember standing in the aisle holding the box, feeling something close to relief, like the problem was basically solved now that the containers existed. The first 2 weeks you used them. You remember the soup. You remember writing little dates on masking tape with a marker that was almost dry and feeling, briefly, like a person who finishes things. Then the tape ran out and you didn't buy more. Not because you decided to stop, you just didn't replace it. And the next container went into the fridge unlabeled. And unlabeled didn't feel like a problem because you'd remember. You always think you'll remember. You didn't grow up watching anyone do this particular thing, not exactly. But you grew up watching dishes sit until someone else moved them. And you told yourself a long time ago that you weren't going to be that. And so when a thing starts slipping, you correct hard for a day or two, and then it slips again, and the correcting gets a little shorter every time, like a swing losing height. And you don't notice the height going, you just notice you're not as high up as you used to be. There's a name on your calendar for a thing called Gym 6 a.m. that repeats every weekday going back 9 months. You set it once in a single confident sitting, the way you set the container plan, the way you've set a dozen plans. The first week you went 3 times, the second week twice. The third week, your alarm went off and you looked at the ceiling and thought, I'll go tomorrow, with the specific calm of someone who believes that sentence completely. You still believe it most mornings. That's the part nobody tells you about. The belief doesn't erode at the same speed as the behavior. The belief stays almost intact long after the behavior is gone. You could ask yourself right now if you're a person who exercises and some old stubborn part of you would still say yes, technically, eventually, soon. The calendar event still says 6 a.m. It has said 6 a.m. for so long that it has stopped being a reminder and become something closer to a fossil, a record of who you intended to be on the day you made it. You might be thinking, that's just life right now, that you're busier than usual, that once this stretch is over, things will go back to normal. It's a reasonable thing to think. It's also what you thought 4 months ago about a different stretch, that also never ended, that just got quietly replaced by this one. Look at the closet for a second. The guitar is in there, behind the vacuum, in a case with a thin layer of dust along the top edge where dust collects on things that don't get picked up. You bought it the year you decided you were going to be someone who played guitar. You learned 4 chords with real focus, the kind of focus that made your fingertips hurt in a way you almost liked, because pain that comes from trying feels different than pain that comes from nothing. Then a week happened where you didn't pick it up, not a decision, just a week. And the week after that, picking it up required slightly more effort than the week before, because now there was a gap to cross, a small debt of rust you'd have to play through before you got back to where you were. And the week after that, the gap was a little wider. You can watch this in your head if you slow it down. The threshold for starting again rising just slightly faster than your motivation to clear it, every single week, until one day the gap is wide enough that picking up the guitar doesn't feel like 10 minutes of practice anymore. It feels like starting over completely. And starting over completely is a much bigger thing to ask of a Tuesday than 10 minutes was. You didn't choose to quit the guitar. Nobody ever announces that decision to themselves. You just kept declining the smaller ask until only the larger ask was left, and the larger ask was always going to lose. The container in the fridge with the unidentifiable rice will sit there for another 9 days. You'll see it every time you open the door. Each time, you'll register it for half a second. a small flicker of something between guilt and fatigue. And each time, the flicker will cost slightly less than actually dealing with it, so you'll close the door again. This is not laziness in the way you've been taught to think about laziness, as some character flaw sitting at the center of you. It's closer to a kind of interest payment. Every postponed thing adds a small amount to a balance, and the balance is invisible until the day you open a drawer or a fridge or a closet, and the whole sum presents itself at once, and you stand there overwhelmed by something that arrived one unnoticed deposit at a time. You've started a journal 3 separate times this year. Each time, the first entry is long, almost suspiciously thoughtful, the kind of entry where you can feel yourself performing self-awareness for an audience of one. The second entry is shorter. The third entry, if it happens, says something like, "Didn't write yesterday, we'll catch up." There is never a fourth entry. There's something almost funny about it if you look at it from far enough away, that the journal entry about not journaling is always the last thing you write before you stop completely, like a final transmission before the signal goes dead. You could call this busy. You could call this a phase. You could call it the wrong time, the wrong year, the wrong amount of sleep. All of those explanations share one quality. They put the cause somewhere outside the actual moment where the choice happened. The fridge door, the snooze button, the guitar case latch, the blank page. None of those moments required willpower in the dramatic sense. None of them were a crisis. Each one was small enough to lose without feeling like you'd lost anything. That's the part that doesn't show up until much later. Not one collapse. Just thousands of negligible withdrawals, each one too small to mourn. None of them ever announcing itself as the one that mattered. Open the fridge again. The container is still there, angled, lid not quite seated. You're not going to deal with it tonight either. You already know that. You knew it the second you opened the door.